Find something like normal again.
You cannot let it stop you. Life is going to continue.
There's nothing you can do, actually. I mean, as far as I can see, you have to just live one day at a time.
It's going to take a while for normalcy to take in because everything's still, everyone's still in the daze.
Tonight, America fights back. The new normal.
From ABC News, this is Nightline. Substituting for Ted Koppel and reporting from Washington, Chris Bury.
Here's the paradox. The nation's leaders are telling Americans it's now their civic duty to buy a car, see a movie, invest in the market, return to regular routines. In other words, to act normally is to do your part in the war on terrorism. But in so many ways, the normal that we hope to achieve won't be the same normal that existed before September 11th. Any more than the Manhattan skyline, minus the Twin Towers, can ever be the normal skyline of New York City. It's not just New York and Washington. You can take a figurative snapshot of before and after anywhere in the country and see how what's considered normal has evolved. Those changes, large and small, are the subject of our broadcast tonight. For example, members of the president's cabinet have been fanning out on commercial airlines to show the skies are safe again.
We have confidence in the ability of the system, and so we're trying to restore that kind of consumer confidence to be able to say, yes, air travel is safe.
But before September 11th, who could imagine that armed soldiers in American airports would be seen as a step on the path to normal? That can be a risky journey. When the Dennison family moved to take a job in Israel, they had to learn a new normal, where terrorism is an established fact of daily life. The dad talks bravely of going about his business as usual.
I think that's probably the most important thing I've learned here is in the midst of someone trying to destroy your lifestyle, the best revenge is living your life to the fullest, enjoying life.
But his own children must watch videos at home because he's scared to let them go to movies downtown.
Well, this year we've sort of made it a joke. We're grounded for the entire year. We can't go anywhere.
But here in this country, the new normal also means the FBI has rounded up hundreds of people and detained them, including a Saudi Arabian doctor living in San Antonio, released just Monday. He had been handcuffed and hauled to jail for nearly 2 weeks, primarily because he shares a name with two of the hijackers, a name he says that's as common in his country as Smith is here. And yet, what are your feelings now about the fact that you were deprived of your freedom for nearly 2 weeks?
Well, I have strong religious beliefs. I'm Muslim, and I believe that whatever happens to us is a test, and to test how strong our faith is, and I'm glad it's over.
Your Congressman, Lamar Smith, has asked the FBI to publicly apologize to you. Is that something that's important to you?
Well, with all the respect, I might disagree with him because it's not time to point fingers and apologize. It's time to cooperate with the officials to conduct their investigation and hopefully get the people or the evils who are behind this.
Given the kind of climate that the federal authorities were operating in, do you think what happened to you was in any way appropriate?
It was an unfortunate situation that I have to go through. And given the circumstances, I understand. Given my travels and my family name, it's fine if they have suspicion. But I thought it will be shorter than 2 weeks.
We'll hear much more from that interview and from the Dennison family and from other voices about how September 11th has shattered our concept of normal when we come back.
After the 270 horsepower Chevy Trailblazer, everything else just seems kind of weak. The all-new Chevy Trailblazer, like a rock.
New sneakers to help her play basketball and win a college scholarship, $26. Books to help her learn her ABCs and become a best-selling author, $30. Globe so she can learn her continents, which will come in handy when she's president, $18. Remembering to take it one day at a time, priceless. There are some things money can't buy. For everything else, there's MasterCard. Accepted for everything you want for your kids.
Sunday, 3 big exclusives, 1 program. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the exiled king of Afghanistan, and Prince Bandar bin Sultan. Only on This Week, Sunday.
BMW 5 Series.
Test drive a 5 Series at your authorized BMW center.
Thomas's Bagels.
Thomas's makes bagels?
Nobody makes a fresh bagel like Thomas's. Golden outside, perfect texture inside.
Thomas's makes a great bagel.
Thomas's Bagels.
Thomas's.
Fresh waffles from Thomas's.
The Winook switched from frozen waffles to Thomas's fresh waffles. And things haven't been the same. Crispy, soft. In taste test, Thomas's fresh waffles beat frozen by 4-1.
Thomas's.
We have a few late headlines tonight. The United Nations Security Council just a few hours ago voted unanimously for a U.S.-sponsored resolution demanding that all countries crack down on suspected terrorists. It calls on nations to freeze bank accounts, share intelligence, and cooperate in ways that could include military action. Also today, President Bush said the U.S. is in hot pursuit of terrorists, and a senior official confirmed American special forces are already on the ground in Afghanistan on scouting missions. It's not official yet, but Transportation Secretary Mineta said Reagan National Airport here in Washington would definitely reopen. Yes.
As the week ended in a nation that remains a landscape of red, white, and blue, where hanging out the flag has now become the norm, here's what normal looked like across the country in just the past 24 hours.
You can take pictures of the Capitol building here on your right-hand side.
Here in Washington, D.C., they were touring the city sights today. The buses were rolling by the U.S. Capitol building, as always, about every 20 minutes. In Denver, the city's art museum was open for business as usual today, and the usual scheduled lectures.
I mean, can you get any more traditional than this still life?
In Los Angeles, some people dropped in at the Comedy Store last night. Argus Hamilton was telling the jokes.
Even today, the Weather Channel today said the 5-day forecast for Afghanistan is 2 days.
And finally, this afternoon, the town of Salina, Texas, it was the regular Friday pep rally at Salina High. Going into tonight's game, the Bobcats were 6-0. At least on the surface, most of America followed its usual routines today, which means we're doing what our leaders keep asking us to do, acting normal.
Program $2.
In the national interest. It's travel just like before.
Get on board. Do your business around the country. Fly and enjoy America's great destination spots.
It's shop just like before.
Go buy that car if they were thinking about it. Go out and have a good dinner.
It's have fun just like before.
Go to a restaurant, a play. You might actually have a better chance of getting tickets to the producers now if you want to come here and see it. But the life of the city goes on.
Yes, in a fashion we have heard it before, in the depths of a Great Depression.
Let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
68 years ago, and yet doesn't it strike almost the perfect note for the times we live in now? Stay calm, FDR was telling the nation. Panic is the enemy. But there's a critical difference between then and now. Today, the enemy is not panic per se, but rather terrorists who want to watch America panic. That's the point of terrorism, to create a fear and uncertainty that is so demoralizing that finally a nation's spirit cracks and it gives in to the terrorists' demands. It's a weapon that the weak use against the powerful, and at times it has been very effective. In 1946, Jews in Palestine fighting to create the State of Israel, a state which now battles terrorism every day, used terrorism to break the will of the better armed British who ruled at that time. A bomb in the King David Hotel, which served as British headquarters, killed nearly 100 people, including civilians. The British were gone within 2 years.
Algiers is still a city of tension.
In the 1950s, there was an uprising in the French colony of Algeria. It was a dirty war on both sides. The French had the advantage in weaponry, but the Algerians began resorting to terrorism, placing bombs that destroyed shops and apartments. Terror was one of the reasons that by 1962, Algeria was an independent state. On the other hand, in the 1970s, Germany successfully faced down a terrorist campaign by a radical left-wing group called Baader-Meinhof, which committed a series of assassinations and murders. That ring was broken up thanks to successful police work, tracking down the terrorists in 1s and 2s and 3s over many years. And there's the lesson for the United States. Terrorism can be defeated, but not overnight, and not if a society fails to keep its morale up. And that's where normal becomes so important. If they are still searching for bodies downtown, but uptown people are sticking to routine, that says to the terrorists and to ourselves that we're still standing, we're still functioning, we are not going to break. Of course, normal today cannot truly be like normal before, certainly not for people who are related to or who were friends of the 6,000 people who died September 11th, nor for those who have to take care of the children of the missing, nor even for people who got out alive or who worked that day as rescuers, nor even for anyone who just happened to see it all come crashing down. Tens of thousands of people were affected in such a way that normal now can never again be like normal was before. But normal is also different for everyone else. In Salina, Texas this afternoon, it was how they opened that pep rally. They never did this before. Now they probably always will.
I think that everybody is back in their normal routine, but I think somewhere, you know, in the deepest part of their hearts that something feels different. Our kids now know that all the freedoms and all the blessings and all the things that we just take for granted every day could be taken away from us in a split second.
Maybe before I didn't really come out and say, hey, I'm a Christian and I want to tell you about Jesus, but now it's made a lot of us feel more stronger in our faith in knowing that God is there.
The tour buses here in Washington may still run on the old schedule, but they skip the White House now. Security restrictions don't let them get close enough. As for being a tourist in Washington, now more emotion comes into it.
Just like flying over the East Coast last night, you saw the lights on, you saw America doing what it does best, and that gave me a sense of pride and that, you know, we'll get through this somehow.
And in Los Angeles, to go hear a comic, or more to the point, to tell jokes, can you do it without the humor feeling forced at a time like this?
How about a round of applause for us for coming out and getting on with our lives tonight and enjoying life, all right? Isn't this great?
Angus Hamilton wrote a whole new opening for his act. Call it Patriot Humor.
As a comedian, I felt the first day that happened that we comedians had to contribute ourselves to the war effort. That we weren't just going to be telling jokes, we were going to be hurling lightning bolts from the front lines of our national resolve. And that we were in this fight as well, just like Bob Hope was in World War II.
and it's easier for us because we don't look downtown Denver and things are smoking, and that makes a big difference.
And one thing we have to point out, for a lot of people we encountered, like this man getting his hair cut in Boston this morning, being normal really doesn't take that much work after all.
Go out and get a haircut and spend a little money here at the mall, you know, and maybe that will help a little bit.
Well, actually, what that says is that most of us are acting fairly normally, really because we can. This isn't a shooting war. We're not being asked to put on a uniform or ration gasoline. Orders are to spend and enjoy. Still, some of what is newly normal may not feel quite right. The new normal has planes flying with lots of empty seats because Americans are still not quite ready to fly. It means long lines at check-in because of security concerns. And here in Washington, it means Reagan National Airport remains closed, a security precaution because the White House is less than 3 miles away. But some in the city say this should not be accepted as what becomes normal now. Clearly, we are still sorting out what normal will mean from now on in America. Whatever we arrive at, it has to be a normal that feels American, that we can live with, and that, if necessary, we would fight for. In the end, if the U.S. is not to lose spirit, the new normal cannot be all that different from the normal we knew before. I'm John Donvan for Nightline in Washington.
When we come back, what normal looks like below 14th Street in Lower Manhattan.
This week only, use your Sears card and get 10% off almost everything in the store, even on sale prices. That's 10% off almost everything you want or need. The credit sale. Only at Sears. Where else?
It's been 1 week since you looked at me. Cause you heard of the sign and I'm angry. 5 days since you laughed at me, saying that you never come back and see me. Yesterday, you've forgiven me, but it'll still be today till I say I'm sorry. Gonna make a digga 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 like a digga 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 like vanilla. It's the finest of the flavors. Gonna see the show cause I know the vertigo is at my door and don't bang your wrist. You'll have to sign a waiver. I have a tendency to wear my mind up my sleeve. I had it's been 1 week since you looked at me. Dropped your eyes to the sides and said I'm sorry.
In this time of need, the American Red Cross is profoundly grateful for your generous outpouring of support. A long period of uncertainty and recovery awaits us all. Thanks to your contributions, the American Red Cross is providing life-saving assistance, including food, shelter, grief counseling, and precious blood. We still need your help. Please call 1-800-HELP-NOW to offer your financial support. Thank you. Together, we can save a life.
The most powerful Duracell Ultra ever. In remote control toys, it's the most powerful alkaline battery in the world.
Coming up, so much for secrecy.
For security reasons, Dick Cheney is in Camp David. If you want to visit him, that's where you go.
Plus Bob Barham, politically incorrect.
The totally new Nissan Altima.
The longest-lasting full-size pickup on the road now comes with an incredible short-term offer. Get up to $5,000 in finance savings on Dodge Ram or $2,000 cash allowance, plus factory-to-dealer incentives that could save you even more. See, compare, drive, Dodge during the Team Dodge sales event.
The totally new Nissan Altima.
In New York City, especially in Lower Manhattan, normal is never going to be exactly the same. It is a changed city. Here's Deborah Amos.
For the most spectacular view of New York City,
travelers ride the Staten Island Ferry. It's a busy boat these days, filled with people who just want to look.
Well, it's not there no more. It used to be a symbol of New York City, but it's not there no more.
As terrible as the television pictures are, the sensation is more powerful in person. Sober faces scan the skyline for what is lost. It is a daily ritual here, too. More than curiosity, this need to look. Measuring the magnitude of the disaster on a human scale draws huge crowds 24 hours a day. There are tears, prayers, spontaneous emotions.
God bless America, my home sweet home.
It is all part of the adjustment. New York is still a war zone, with 1,500 National Guard on the streets.
There are no pictures.
And the still smoldering rubble of a battlefield. There is another way to look at the disaster. The remains of the World Trade Center are brought here to this 3,000-acre landfill. The trucks roll in every day, making this the world's largest open-air crime lab.
Well, there's no real mystery here. You know, unfortunately, we all saw the pictures. This isn't really a mystery. We know what happened.
The wreckage, examined at the crash site, gets a closer look here. For the airline black boxes, for the wedding rings, the watches, small tokens of the lives lost in 1.2 million tons of debris.
But we are looking for things that would help put the pieces of the puzzle together.
Putting the puzzle back together, that's what Mark Schweitzer is trying to do. This is only the second time he's been home since the disaster. Barred by the city from living here, his apartment is too close to the World Trade Center.
You're allowed to come back and forth, but you can't move back in yet.
When do you think you'll be able to?
I don't know. Could be a week or two, could be a month or two. I don't know.
And outside the window, a patio, like some Pompeii scene covered in dust. Here, the disaster is not only an international crisis, but a more personal shock.
What do you think when you come in and look out the window now?
I think about what an incredible tragedy, and it's amazing just how many lives have been affected by this. And I feel lucky. There were some 6,400 people over there who are never going to get to go home.
The first time he came home, it looked like the end of the world. The images he captured in these photos has given way to a remarkable cleanup 15 floors below.
I mean, there will come a day when you live here again, and that space is probably going to be completely cleared. Is that going to be, I don't know, creepy?
Yeah, it's going to be creepy. But I think over time it'll get less creepy. It can't get any more creepy than it's been.
A few blocks away, Nino Vendome opened his restaurant to rescue workers.
Pick a salad and move down with the entree. Let's go, let's go, let's go.
With free meals for everyone in uniform who works at the crash site.
This is Nick, this is General Manager Nikki Pasculi. I'd like to introduce you to Karen. She's a volunteer.
How are you?
People like her who make this country great. Thank you, darling.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Hey, you're great. Thank you.
Thank you. You're wonderful.
No, it's we.
You're amazing.
We're doing a good job. Thank you.
And the food was great. We were stunned.
Thank you.
How many people are you feeding every day?
Oh, God knows.
Thousands?
Thousands. I think we could be up to 7,000 a day. Get the hot dogs out, get the beans out, and keep the sauerkraut going. I also have some potato salad over here. I'm going to break down. Bring it out, but you need to put it on ice, right? I'll do it. It's already been put it on ice. Let's do it.
We're going to be cooking pasta all day and all night.
We keep this going 14 hours a day.
Vendome foots the bill. With donations from other local restaurants, volunteers work around the clock.
What you said before, the cold cuts of sandwiches is fine. It's 10 o'clock.
I have Italian salad, Caesar, and this is ham, artichoke. Would you like some mashed potatoes?
You like my potatoes, don't you? I think a hot dog's waiting for you. There you go. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, boys, now it's dinner. All these people that you see here are all volunteers.
Gail Everett is an investment banker.
In your normal life, how many police officers would you have talked to before this experience?
Hopefully not that many.
If you guys were not risking your lives out there, my family could never live the way they live. So God bless you.
Nino, number one, Nino.
So when you're out there and you're doing a thing with the bad guys, you're doing it for some real people. My family thanks you. I thank you. God bless you.
Steve Papalicio is one of the chefs.
We call this commando cooking. This is commando cooking. It's like being in the woods with a nail clipper and a match.
A change from his old job at Windows on the World on the top floor of the World Trade Center.
It's hard. It's very, very hard. It's overwhelming. It didn't hit me for a few days, and then after a few days, I realized that there's nothing left. There's nothing.
80 of his co-workers are still missing.
My thoughts were to a lot of the guys that I worked with, the guys that don't get the recognition, guys that didn't go to culinary school and they didn't work in France, potato peelers, shrimp cleaners, all those guys. Those are the guys, those are the faces that I still see that I'll never forget.
Now he takes comfort in the faces of the rescue workers, makes sure that they're fed. This restaurant will stay open as long as the cleanup continues. That could be up to a year. For Nightline, this is Deborah Amos in New York.
When we come back, more from our conversation with a Middle Eastern doctor living in Texas, caught up in the massive FBI dragnet following the attacks.
There's some big news from Ford, Lincoln, and Mercury dealerships. Saturday service hours. Now it's even easier to get the service you need and the convenience you want. Come in for great deals on batteries, shocks, tires, and more. And factory-trained technicians who know your vehicle best. So for the right people, the right parts, and always the right prices, how does Saturday work for you? Quality care on Saturday at participating Ford, Lincoln, and Mercury dealerships.
Let's belt it out for your Pittsburgh Steelers!
I don't care what stadium you work for, all right? If you want to write a check for who let the dogs out, I'm still going to need to see some ID.
Next time, use the Visa check card instead of cash or checks. It'll get you in, out, and on with life.
This Sunday, the practice starts at 10:09, 909 Central.
You're deciding who lives and who dies.
She got away with murder.
If you reveal a privilege, I will sue you.
He is doing life for another man's crime.
I'm innocent.
Charles S. Dutton.
You're fired. Get him out of here. I'm not leaving.
An all-new Practice. Right after the premiere of the best new drama, Alias, presented without interruption. Whoa. It all begins this Sunday at 9/8 Central on ABC.
What are little girls made of? Sugar. Spice. And everything.
Nice.
The all-wheel drive Subaru Forester. Sport utility top. Car easy.
So, what are you made of?
Now you can get an APR as low as 2.9% on all 2002 Forester models.
If your glucosamine tablet seems this big to swallow, now there's an easier way to cushion your aching joints. Try Flexable Natural Glucosamine. No need to cut it down. Flexable's tasty orange drink mix is as easy to take as your breakfast juice. No need to break it up. Flexable's delicious chewable wafers taste as good as a special treat. And when you're ready for bed, Flexable PM is sugar-coated to help the glucosamine go down. Before you lug home another load of horse pills, try Flexable brand. Glucosamine's not a hard pill to swallow anymore.
In light of unprecedented action by General Motors, Buick announces 0.0% APR financing. Now, through October 31st, get interest-free financing on all new Buicks. Every Century, LeSabre, Park Avenue, Regal, and the all-new Rendezvous. Pay no interest, 0% APR through October 31st. Keep America rolling. See your nearest Buick dealer today.
Now more from our interview with Dr. Al-Hazmi, the Saudi medical resident just released from detention this week after the FBI cleared him of any connection to the terrorist attacks. At 5 in the morning on September 12th, federal agents knocked on the door of his San Antonio home, presented a warrant, searched his house for about 5 hours, and then took him away in handcuffs.
I told them what is my guilt. They said, we'll explain it later.
They didn't tell you at all when you were handcuffed why it was they were taking you into custody?
No, they didn't.
And what happened next?
We went to the FBI office, I guess, or INS building, one of them. And there they said, your visa has been revoked. It's a J1 visa, supposed to expire June 2002. And I told them, who revoked it? They said, the State Department. And I said, what's the reason? They said, well, we'll explain it later when your lawyer is here.
And then you were taken at some point to New York City, is that correct?
That night, they took me to Comal County Jail. I spent the night there, and then I spent another night there. And then Friday morning, they took me by small commercial airplane to New York.
During this time when you were in the county jail, did they tell you why it was you were being held, other than the fact that they say your visa had expired?
No, they said one of the INS officials told me, you might be a material witness, and that's it.
And so what happened when you got to New York?
Well, we went to New York, and they took me to a building there. I think it was Lower Manhattan. And I spent the night there. That was Friday night. And I spent Saturday night and Sunday night and Monday night, I believe. Tuesday night, they took me to another building. I believe it was in Brooklyn. And I met for the first time the lawyer. But it was not my lawyer, who was appointed by my company, Aramco, from San Antonio. It was a lawyer appointed by the court, and his name was Gary. And he read the allegations to me, and that was the first time to know the allegations against me.
And what were those allegations at that moment?
They said you share the family name of two suspects. I believe the first one was Salim Al-Hazmi, and the second one, I believe, was Nawaf Al-Hazmi.
Do you have any relationship with either of them?
None whatsoever, none. Al-Hazmi family name is a big tribe, and there are thousands of people who share the last name. It's like John and Smith in the United States.
Were you allowed to call your wife, your children, your family?
I was allowed to call my wife the first day they arrested me in INS building, and that was the last time I called her.
Tell us a little bit about what the interrogation was like. You spent nearly 2 weeks in detention. What was that like over a period of days?
Well, the FBI officials, they conducted themselves in a professional manner, and I would say, given the circumstances and the unusual situation, my treatment was fair.
At what point did the prosecutors or the FBI tell you that they thought you might be clear, and at what point did they let you know that perhaps you were not a material witness?
Well, my lawyer, Sean O'Shea, he arranged a meeting between me and him and FBI and the prosecutor, I believe. That was Sunday, late afternoon, early evening time, and we sat and I answered all of their questions, and to their satisfaction, and that was the end of story.
It wasn't only the law enforcement, I understand, that you had a problem with. There were reporters gathered around your home in San Antonio for much of this time?
My wife told me it was crazy in San Antonio, people talking about my story. Some of the media was guessing and trying to make a movie out of my story without knowing the facts. Some of the media coverage was fair, but most of it was just guessing.
And your name was all over the front pages and on television and radio as a material witness.
Well, in retrospect, I'm glad that I was in segregation cell, has no access to the newspaper, because could you imagine just being detained as a suspect or possible terrorist in that insane crime? I'll be sad.
Your Congressman, Lamar Smith, has asked the FBI to publicly apologize to you. Is that something that's important to you?
Well, with all the respect, I might disagree with him, because it's not time to point fingers and apologize. It's time to cooperate with the officials to conduct their investigation and hopefully get the people or the evils who are behind this.
You have about a year left on your residency, I understand. After this experience, are you soured on the United States at all? Would you want to stay here, or has this experience left a bad taste in your mouth?
I still believe that the justice system in this country is one of the best in the whole world. So we just want to keep it together and treat those who are still detained with dignity. And I believe that the officials will do exactly what they are instructed to do.
How did your family take it, your wife and children?
Well, I cannot thank my wife enough. She took care of the kids. She told them I went to help with the rescue efforts in New York. So they were proud of their dad that he was helping others.
Dr.
Serious and important way. Ambassador Paul Bremer, he was chairman of the National Commission on Terrorism, and two former United States senators, Republican Warren Rudman, Democrat Gary Hart. They were co-chairs of the U.S. Commission on National Security. Senator Hart, let me start with you. Your commission's conclusions were eerie, sobering, prescient. America will become increasingly vulnerable to hostile attack on our own homeland, and our military superiority will not entirely protect us. Americans will likely die on American soil, possibly in large numbers. That's exactly what happened. What do we do now to try to do as much as we can to make sure something like this doesn't happen again?
Our commission strongly believes that our government should create a national homeland security agency, and that term is a very, very important one with substantive meaning, and that Congress should reorganize itself in accordance with that reorganization of the federal protection assets for our homeland, so that it can better cope with the problems that this country is now going to face. The difference between an office and an agency is an office is a coordinating, urging kind of mechanism with no statutory authority and no budgetary authority, and therefore can only hope that other departments of the government scattered all over the place will cooperate. We found that didn't work with the energy crisis in the 70s. Many people believe it's not working with drugs today. We strongly believe that the border assets, particularly of Coast Guard, Customs, and Border Patrol, be brought under the jurisdiction of a new agency head created by Congress with budgetary authority.
Senator Rudman, your co-chair, Senator Hart, couldn't put it more crisply and clearly. Tom Ridge, the governor of Pennsylvania, has been asked by George W. Bush to join this fight against terrorism. What must he get from the president in order to do his job in a serious, substantive way?
Well, Tim, first let me say, you know, I certainly applaud what the president's done. It's a very good first step. I mean, they are recognizing they have to start pulling this together. But it will not come together, in our view, long term without the things Gary has spoken of. We, in addition to what Gary spoke of, we take FEMA and put it essentially into that same agency. Now, that is what you call the protection part of this whole problem. There's three problems. There's prevention, which is intelligence. There's protection, which is what we're talking about now. And there's response, which also would be part of this agency. The first responders all over the country have to be the local folks. They have to be well trained. They have to have the help of the National Guard, which we believe ought to be trained in this as well. And you need strong liaison with the Department of Defense. I mean, if it's not a statute, if it's not a cabinet level agency with a cabinet officer that has clout, well, you know, no matter how good Tom Ridge has a relationship with the president, and he has a great one, We don't think long-term it's the way to go. But, you know, we're not being critical. I mean, the president had to do something. He did what was available to him by executive order. And my sense from talking to people on the Hill, this is probably a work in progress.
So in a constructive way, what you're suggesting strongly is that Tom Ridge have line authority.
Correct.
He have budgetary responsibility for people who are involved in this fight against terrorism.
Right, and for instance, the Coast Guard would still be the Coast Guard. It would still have its identical structure. The only thing, it would not report to the Secretary of Transportation, it would report to the Secretary for Homeland Defense.
Ambassador Bremer, let me talk to you about your report. Terrorists attack American targets more often than those of any other country. America's preeminent role in the world guarantees this will continue to be the case. And you go on, as the World Trade Center bombing demonstrated, that's the one in '93 you were talking about, we cannot rely solely on existing border controls and procedures to keep foreign terrorists out of the United States. In the 90s, a terrorist incident was almost 20% more likely to result in death or injury than an incident 2 decades ago. The World Trade Center bombing in New York in '93 killed 6, wounded 1,000, but the terrorist goal was to topple the Twin Towers, killing tens of thousands. They did it.
Yeah, they sure did. The attack on September 11th really was a culmination of a long-range trend during the 1990s, a change in the tactics of terrorism, which reflected a change in the motives. The motives during the 1990s, and this is not a secret to anybody who's been studying terrorism, shifted away from narrow political goals to more ideological, religious, apocalyptic goals, goals of revenge or simple hatred. And that in turn meant that terrorists were willing to inflict mass casualties, and as both of our reports pointed out, it was only a matter of time when this happened inside the United States.
Terrorists in the 60s and 70s were sensitive to their own political agenda and ideology and wanted to avoid, in large part, mass killings because they didn't want to turn people against their campaign.
Their goal was to kill enough people to get the cameras there and the press attention, but not so many that the public at large would be turned off. As one terrorist expert put it, in the 70s they were trying to get a place at the table. They wanted to start a negotiation, let our people go, change this policy or that. In the 1990s it changed to let's turn over the table and kill everybody there.
Senator Hart, in terms of our immigration policy, how do we put something in place that continues America's policy of being open and free and inviting to people who want to come here and start a new life, and yet have the necessary protections that make sure that people who don't have good intentions for us are kept out?
Well, the short answer, of course, is very carefully. It's not just people, it's equipment as well. One of the things we discovered working with experts in the Coast Guard and other agencies was about 1.3 to 1.5 million people cross our borders every day. 58 to 60,000 shipping containers, 340 or 50,000 vehicles cross our borders, and our border agencies inspect something like 2 or 3% tops of all of those shipments. And the people get closer scrutiny, obviously, but a lot are falling between the cracks. That's one of the reasons why we think reorganization of the government's protection assets, including those 3 uniform Border Patrol agencies, is absolutely imperative to close the gaps and seal up the seams that presently exist in our system. People are dropping between the cracks. We are putting people on watch lists and then losing them, and that simply can't go on. Obviously, the FBI has a very critical role to play in this as well. There is no short answer to your question, unfortunately. It's, we'll probably end up to some degree, yet undetermined, reducing our reliance on international commerce. Now, that's obviously going to be on the margin, not substantially, but I don't see how else to do closer inspection of shipments and vehicles and closer identification of people without slowing up this process and doing it right.
George Washington Hospital in downtown D.C. is more prepared than most. The chemical and biohazard expert, Craig Diatley, showed us a decontamination alley.
These showers are designed to decontaminate individuals who have been exposed to a chemical or, in a rare instance, a biologic agent.
GW also has an isolation ward with a large supply of antidotes.
We feel that we're as well prepared as a hospital is likely to be for these types of situations. But even at that, we would quickly need help from the local government and the federal government, depending upon how large the situation rose to.
While Thompson works to improve local preparedness, he told us his quick federal response could contain any outbreak and prevent an epidemic. But Congressman Christopher Shays is not so sure.
Right now, we don't have the ability to respond to a massive number of patients. But, you know, the good news is that we are a lot better off than we were a few years ago.
No one in the Congress knows more about the bio threat than Chris Shays, a Republican from Connecticut who is chairman of a House Committee on National Security, has held 18 hearings on bioterrorism. Do potential terrorists currently, to your knowledge, have biological weapons?
Well, we know countries that sponsor terrorists and protect terrorists do.
What countries?
You can be pretty certain that Libya and Iran and Iraq and who knows what's in the Sudan.
Is it therefore not likely that terrorists who want to use biological weapons probably have access to them?
I'm absolutely certain that terrorists, if they don't have access to biological agents now, will, and I'm absolutely certain that they'll use them. The expertise exists. The potential that it's being shared with the terrorists is almost a no-brainer.
Tell me something. Possibility of a biological or chemical attack someplace in the United States.
It's possible.
It is.
It's possible, but quite doubtful. I mean,
why do you say doubtful?
It's not very effective in regards to the dissemination. If it's anthrax, it'd have to be some way through the air. And if you're going to put it through one of these crop dusting planes that has been on the news lately, a lot of it is going to be dissipated throughout the air and the atmosphere.
There are 100 different ways that you can imagine they can do it, and the one thing you're pretty certain of is they certainly won't have the restraint. And if it's a dangerous activity for them to do, and they might perish with it, they're willing to perish with it.
When the FAA learned that at least one of the suicide hijackers had asked about crop dusters, they grounded all crop dusters briefly. Now they're back in the air, but they are not permitted to fly over heavily populated areas. While experts may disagree on how difficult it would be to stage a deadly biological attack, the consensus is not difficult enough. Let's say that anthrax, New York City, and suddenly the wind was right.
Okay.
And Manhattan is drenched, if you will, in anthrax. It wouldn't take long for a lot of people to drop dead. I'm talking big numbers of people, right?
If, in fact, they were able to saturate the public, there would be some fatalities, no question about it. But we would be up there within hours, and we would be able to contain it.
Anthrax.
How we treat anthrax is by antibiotics, ciprofloxacin and doxycycline.
Yeah, that's what there's a run on in New York right now.
There is, but I don't think the American public should go out and stockpile antibiotics because they are available, and we can move them quickly. We have enough to treat 2 million people for 60 days.
Really?
Yes, for 2 million people for 60 days.
Do you have a gas mask?
Do I have a gas mask?
Yeah.
No.
You don't?
No.
Are you aware of the fact? I didn't.
Do you have one, Mike?
No, I don't.
And you shouldn't have one.
Well, until yesterday, I was unaware until I read roll call. Everybody in Congress and all their staffers have gas masks. If that's true, why don't the rest of us Americans have gas masks? Should people be going out and buying gas masks now?
No.
No.
No. How would you be able to utilize it? Are you going to have a gas mask with you 24 hours a day? Are you going to go to CVS wearing a gas mask or taking it with? It's not practical. And I don't think the American people should be, scared into believing that they have to have a gas mask.
The Congress has appropriated $40 billion to do a lot of things. If you had $1 billion today, because that's what Ted Kennedy has asked for bioterrorism, what would you do with it?
First off, I would increase the security on our laboratories. Number two, I would increase the purchase of supplies and put more push packages in. We would put more money into research in order to come up with better vaccines and better antibiotics for any of these maladies that we've talked about.
Thompson has already accelerated his order for smallpox vaccine. He told us that 40 million new doses will be ready next year instead of in 3 years.
In the meantime, we have 15.4 million dosage of vaccines boxed and prepared to deliver if there is a smallpox breakout any place in the country.
15 million, let's say.
15 million.
For a country of 280 million.
That is correct.
So obviously we're behind.
No, we're not behind.
We're
prepared, Mike, because it would not affect the whole country. If an individual got it, we'd vaccinate the people around it, and that would contain it. And we have enough vaccine to be able to do that any place in the country.
Last January, the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta said this country's public health infrastructure was, quote, not adequate to detect and respond to a bioterrorist event. Why were we so unprepared?
I think we're unprepared because we never expected anything like September 11th. We never expected anything to happen that would affect the continental United States of America. But since then, we put out an alert to every health department in this country. And we asked those individuals, please advise us. If you see anything suspicious or mysterious out there, let us know. And we're also hooked up on a laboratory network. 81 labs throughout America are hooked up, and they are also monitored on a daily basis ever since September 11th to find out if there's anything suspicious, to give us notice so that we can move our teams in any place in the country.
While the Secretary acknowledges the government should have done more sooner, he assured us that if they ever do detect a biological attack, they can quickly diagnose exactly what it is.
Analyze it, and we would advise on television, on radio, exactly what to do, what treatments to do. That's why it's so important. If there is anything suspicious, contact the local health department, who contacts the state, who contacts CDC, and we'll have people there within the hours to take care of it, set up an action plan, and we will implement.
Look, the telephone system is going to break down. There are going to be so many calls.
And we will be in there immediately.
Don't stock up on antibiotics. Don't stock up on gas masks. Don't change your way of life.
That is correct.
And if your hospital doesn't have a plan for counteracting a biological attack at this moment, they will have.
And they should quickly. And I'm certainly, this has been sort of a wake up for America.
Mm-hmm.
And we are moving a lot faster than we were before September 11th. But we were prepared before September 11th. And I want you to understand that.
The buck stops here.
Right here.
You're taking on, by this statement,
yeah. I'm responsible.
A big responsibility.
Yes, I am.
And you're willing to do it.
Yes, I am.
So while it's clear that America's cities are ill-equipped right now to deal with a biological attack, Secretary Thompson is confident he can rush federal help to any area under attack and contain it. However, the General Accounting Office reports that many officials remain skeptical. And so tonight we can only hope that Secretary Thompson is right.
I just called to ask, how are the kids? And she flowers the kids.
But if I heard right, then you'd come home and say, why didn't you flower my kids?
Am I here right now? This is just me.
No, ma'am. It's the static on your cell phone. Here, Sprint PCS built the only all-digital, all-PCS nationwide network. So your calls are clear.
So no more of this, right?
Not on my watch, ma'am.
2,500 minutes for $39.99 from Sprint PCS.
The terror attacks have changed just about everything you do. Monday, Eye on America goes coast to coast to see the changes on the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather.
On Justice for All Tuesday, attorney Nick Fallon is dedicated to helping children.
Tell me what you want and I will try and get it.
But his ruthless tactics may cross the line.
You could be disbarred.
An all-new The Guardian. Then, a mother vanishes, and a traumatized family takes desperate action.
Where's my mother?
An all-new Judging Amy after The Guardian, CBS Tuesday.
The most watched show in America is back. Meet the new castaways of Survivor Africa. Clarence, the basketball coach.
It's Africa. Little things might kill you faster than the big stuff.
Diane, the mail carrier.
It's not going to make me feel bad if I got to stomp on somebody else's parade.
Carl, the dentist.
I'm going to scheme and not let them know the real me.
Jesse, the deputy sheriff.
I'm willing to do whatever it takes to win.
Who will be the ultimate survivor? Find out on the season premiere, Thursday, October 11th. It's a jungle out there.
When the suspects in the September 11th bombings were identified as Muslims, people who followed the teachings of Islam, President Bush went to great lengths to point out that the overwhelming majority of the world's more than 1 billion Muslims are decent, law-abiding citizens. How then is it that a religion that promises peace, harmony, and justice to those who follow the will of Allah can have in their midst thousands committed to terrorism in the name of Allah? Every Friday afternoon at 1 o'clock, Imam Faisal Abdul Rauf leads an Islamic prayer service at the Al-Farah Mosque. This is not in Cairo, not Baghdad or Riyadh. This mosque is in a storefront building in downtown New York City, just 12 blocks from where the World Trade Center once stood, where the U.S. government says Muslims perpetrated the worst act of terrorism in our country's history. This area had been cordoned off by police because it's so close to ground zero. So until Friday, Imam Faisal and his congregation were unable to pray here. How do you feel as a Muslim knowing that people of your faith committed this act that resulted in the loss of probably 6,000 lives?
It's painful. When this thing first happened, everybody in the community said, oh God, let this not be a person from our faith, tradition, or from our background.
What would you say to people in this country who, looking at what happens in the Middle East, would associate Islam with fanaticism, with terrorism?
Fanaticism and terrorism have no place in Islam. That's just as absurd as associating Hitler with Christianity or David Koresh with Christianity. There are always people who will do peculiar things and think that they are doing things in the name of their religion. But the Quran is, God says in the Quran that they think that they're doing right, but they're doing wrong.
There are now more than 6 million Muslims in the United States, more than the number of Episcopalians or Lutherans or Methodists or Presbyterians. Islam is now this country's fastest growing religion. After Friday's service, we talked with some of the members of the Al-Farah Mosque. So the average American, if you say Islam, what do they think?
The average?
Trouble?
The average American, they think trouble, terrorism.
Terrorism?
I think terrorism, so, yes. Exactly.
Fear?
Right now, yeah, if you ask them right now.
Fanatics?
And you know what? I think all of us wish to speak to every American and tell them, hey, we're American. We're American and we're Muslims. We're not terrorism.
Explain for someone who doesn't know, who doesn't understand your religion. In the simplest term, explain.
In the simplest term, Islam says that human life is the most sacrosanct. And there is no way that Islam would allow a suicide mission and would allow the killing of innocents.
Islam means submission. It means submission to God. It also means peace to a lot of people, which is what it means to me. Islamic terrorism, I mean, those two words have no meaning to me as a Muslim.
But Muslim terrorists in the name of Islam have struck against the United States time and time again. Osama bin Laden, the prime suspect in these latest attacks, is also thought to have been responsible for the car bomb attack in Saudi Arabia that killed 5 Americans, the attack on the USS Cole, which killed 17 sailors, the deaths of 18 U.S. Army Rangers in Somalia, and the bombings of 2 U.S. embassies in East Africa that killed 224 people. We met with 4 of this country's leading imams, Islamic religious leaders, to talk about this wave of terror, including the most recent attack at the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. Imam Siraj Wahaj of Brooklyn. Did you think that Muslims could have committed this?
No. Islam doesn't only talk about the ends, but also the means. That however angry you are, you couldn't do anything like this. You couldn't kill innocent people.
Imam Hamza Youssef of California.
It's prohibited in Islam to torture animals. It's prohibited in Islam to kill animals without just cause. So the idea of killing human beings, innocent human beings, is an anathema to Muslims. They're deeply shocked by it.
While Islam forbids the killing of innocents, in this 1998 interview, bin Laden justified the U.S. Embassy bombings in Africa, saying every American man is our enemy, whether he is a soldier or a taxpayer. As for the women and children who died, he says women and children die every day in Palestine. In a statement last week, bin Laden called for a jihad or holy war in the name of Allah.
I would say that he has no legitimate state authority, that in Islam jihad can only be declared by legitimate state authority, and this is accepted by consensus. There is no vigilantism in Islam. Muslims believe in legitimate state authority.
You think he's a vigilante?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All Muslims are guided by the words of Islam's holy book, the Quran, which is believed to be the word of God and explains how Muslims should lead their lives. It also says fighting should only be in self-defense. Fight in the way of Allah against those who fight against you, but be not aggressive. And the Quran forbids suicide.
They cannot bring any textual evidence from the Quran, from the traditions of the Prophet, to prove anything that justifies what they've done.
So then it's just outright aggression.
It's outright aggression.
It has nothing to do with Islam.
That's my belief.
If the people who are responsible for this are followers of Islam, how do you justify that?
Islamically, you cannot.
You don't justify it.
There's no justification. But how do Christians in this country, mainstream Christians, have to justify fundamentalist Christians who kill people at abortion clinics, who blow up abortion clinics? Many of the terrorist activities in this country are actually done by extremist Christian elements. And I don't think anybody in the mainstream Christian world would see that as anything other than a serious aberration. Unfortunately, because of our ignorance in this country of Islam, when we see these type things, there's an assumption that somehow Islam condones this thing.
It is the Islamic belief in the afterlife that could be an incentive to die in the name of Islam. According to the Prophet Muhammad, the next life is paradise, offering forgiveness.
In the Islamic belief system, the next life is the primary life. The next life is more real, more intense, and more vivid.
I think that there are people that do these things, that believe that we have a noble end, and the noble end is to bring about some kind of conflict, to wake up the Muslim world, to start a global jihad against the evil West.
And the Satan of the evil West, according to Muslim extremists, is the United States and its culture of commercialism, which Imam Farid Isaac equates with a religion.
It is the fastest growing religion in the world, the religion of consumerism. And everybody is being drawn into this new religion. And so, if you do not buy into this, you are an outcast, you are a heretic, there is the hellfire of utter poverty which awaits you.
And throughout the Muslim world, there is also strong opposition to America's foreign policy, particularly in the Middle East because of its support of Israel and economic sanctions against Iraq.
It is a reaction against the policies of the U.S. government politically, where we espouse principles of democracy and human rights, and where we ally ourselves with oppressive regimes in many of these countries.
Are you in any way suggesting that we in the United States deserved what happened?
I wouldn't say that the United States deserved what happened, but the United States policies were an accessory to the crime that happened.
Okay. You saying that we're an accessory?
Yes.
How?
Because we have been an accessory to a lot of innocent lives dying in the world. In fact, in the most direct sense, Osama bin Laden is made in the USA.
Bin Laden and his supporters were in fact recruited and paid nearly $4 billion by the CIA and the government of Saudi Arabia in the 1980s to fight with the Mujahideen rebels against the former Soviet Union, which had invaded Afghanistan. After the Soviets pulled out, the Saudis, our best friends in the Arab world, our staunchest ally during the Gulf War, poured hundreds of millions of dollars into the newly formed Taliban regime until 1999, when the Saudi government feared that bin Laden and the Taliban were out of control. Bin Laden's faith is a strict puritanical form of Islam called Wahhabism, which was founded in the 18th century in Saudi Arabia and is now that country's predominant ideology.
Wahhabism tends to produce increasingly that kind of stark view of what is right and what is wrong.
Vali Nasser, a Muslim and a professor of political science at the University of San Diego, is an expert on Islamic extremist movements.
It's more likely to support the kinds of violence that majority of Muslims don't believe their faith actually supports.
Osama bin Laden grew up a Wahhabi in Saudi Arabia and has turned that extreme vision of Islam into a terrorism network that has backed the Taliban government in Afghanistan and has adherents in violent fundamentalist movements in more than 20 countries. And at the core of Wahhabism is Saudi Arabia, which spends hundreds of millions of dollars promoting this ideology, which forbids any form of music, dance, or movies. Those who drink alcohol can be flogged, and anyone who commits adultery can face execution. And when you say that Saudi Arabia is the ideological center of gravity for Muslim extremists, Muslim fanatics?
Well, because Saudi Arabia has been exporting its vision of Islam, has been investing in religious institutions, education systems, movements that promotes its vision of Islam. It has contributed enormously to ideologization and fanaticization of Islam all the way from Malaysia to Morocco.
And how does that view of Islam promote violence?
Well, it makes it more likely that given the crises that are rampant in the Muslim world, it's much easier that the militant, fanatical interpretations of Islam becomes the basis for launching movements that are increasingly turning violent.
But is there a big leap from that to an act of terror?
There is a leap, but the issue is that helps legitimate an act of terror. That helps recruitment for act of terror. So the climate is very important. If what Saudi Arabia is doing is not promoting terrorism, it's promoting that climate.
One of the ways the Saudis have been promoting that climate is to finance religious schools, many of them on the Pakistan-Afghanistan border, where young Muslims from around the world go to be indoctrinated in the strict tenets of Wahhabism. Imam Farid Isaac was one of them. He spent 8 years in a seminary where he was given lessons not only in Islam, but also in urban warfare and the ultimate sacrifice.
The notion that death in the path of God was the highest of our aspirations.
What is the basic philosophy that is taught in seminaries like the one you attended?
I think that there is a sense of a very literal understanding of the faith, and a profound sense that if we adhere to the literal understanding of the faith, then we will be saved. But then there's also a sense that we are the only ones in the world that really matter, and that other people in the rest of the world, particularly people who do not share our faith, they do not matter.
We wanted to talk to the Saudi government, but its embassy in Washington did not respond to our request. Last week, the Saudis broke off diplomatic relations with the Taliban. And now, the United States, in the words of President Bush, is in hot pursuit of Osama bin Laden and the Taliban forces harboring him in Afghanistan, a prospect that frightens Muslim leaders in America.
If we're going to go into the Muslim world for more collateral damage, more bombing, more death, more destruction, the creation of more extreme conditions, we're not going to win a war on terrorism. We're going to, in fact, exacerbate the symptoms.
The way in which the United States and its allies in the world today go about in dealing with this crisis, that will really determine for a very, very long time the nature of whether fundamentalism will grow and whether it rears its many, many ugly heads.
You said earlier that you point the finger at U.S. policy, I think, as an accessory to the crime. Is that right?
Yes.
Let me point the finger at you for a minute. What have you personally done to denounce Muslim fundamentalist beliefs that inform these terrorists?
Ed, if you're asking the question, have we as Muslims done enough? No, I don't think we have. We should do more, and I think one of the lessons of this tragedy is that, to do something.
Yes.
The question is, what do we do as a Muslim world? 1,200,000,000 Muslims. What do we do now?
To make it a better world.
To make it a better world.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it the responsibility, does not Islam, does not Allah require that Muslims police their own religion and rid themselves of extremists?
Yes, absolutely. It's an obligation for Muslims to root them out, and I think it is a jihad now for the Muslims in the Muslim country to rid themselves of this element.
Enter a new era of discovery at Bristol-Myers Squibb, where groundbreaking genetic research is underway.
Winning the Tour de France was a victory for cancer medicines. But Luke, it's just the start of incredible things to come. Imagine, Luke, your medical history, the story of your genes on a card you carry in your wallet. Your doctor sees your cancer coming years before and gives you a daily pill to take that could prevent it.
At the Bristol-Myers Squibb Center for Applied Genomics, researchers strive to unlock the secrets of breast and colon cancer, Alzheimer's, and diabetes. They're developing medicines tailored to your unique genes. Bristol-Myers Squibb is beginning a revolution in medicine. Our goal is to extend and enhance life, and to lead the way in new frontiers against disease.
Hope, triumph, and the miracle of medicine. Bristol-Myers Squibb Company.
Whatever you're looking for, you'll find it on Switchboard.com. The free online yellow pages with businesses, people, and products nationwide. Plus maps and directions to help you get there. Switchboard.com. It's the yellow pages electrified.
60 Minutes, a CBS News magazine, will continue.
Tonight, see the show critics call the smartest drama this side of the West Wing.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
Richard Dreyfuss stars in the education of Max Bickford. Then, 3 brutal murders.
You did threaten to kill those boys.
One lawyer says he's guilty. One says he's innocent. Only the real killer knows the truth.
Your husband's only alibi.
You think I did it with him?
Well, you're one hell of motive.
Brian Dennehy, Mary Stuart Masterson. Spend a night on the edge of your...
These are the days of miracles, the age of modern medicine, where digital eyes uncover the mysteries of the human body, where skilled surgeons repair arteries in the brain and heart through incisions no longer than an inch. These are the days of rapid recoveries and incredible outcomes. St. Francis Hospital and Medical Center. These are the days of miracles.
Why do people climb mountains? Why do opposites attract? Why do you want the new Camry? The new Camry, reinvented so it's faster, sleeker, roomier, better. You're gonna want one. See your local Toyota dealer.
Weather on the 3s, only on Channel 3 Eyewitness News this morning.
Duty
honor, country are words that many Americans only a few weeks ago may have simply shrugged off as mundane expressions of excessive patriotism. After witnessing the heroism of our cops and firefighters, those words now resonate across the country. They also happen to form the motto of the Long Gray Line, West Point, the U.S. military academy whose graduates will for certain be engaged in the war that is certainly to come. We went to West Point this past week to try to get a sense of just how the newest generation of American officers will handle themselves in what everyone agrees is a new and uncertain world. A ceremony as old as the nation. For 200 years, each day at first light, the sound of reveille and the flutter of flags on this plateau overlooking the Hudson River in New York.
Face!
West Point has played the central role in American history. Such cadets as Grant and Eisenhower, Patton and MacArthur, war makers and peacemakers, generation after generation, challenge after challenge. For this generation of cadets, the challenge began Tuesday, September 11th.
Immediately from that moment, my reaction was, I'm so glad to be in the military right now. There's times when you question, I think, why you're here, because it is a constant challenge and there are things that kind of run you down. But there's nothing like September 11th to instill in you again why you're here.
Cadet Erica Watson, McHenry, Illinois. Andrew Blickon, Boulder, Colorado. Libby Hayden, East Greenwich, Rhode Island. And Brian Babcock, Bowie, Maryland. 4 of the best and brightest of the 900 who will soon graduate as second lieutenants.
I was in a national security seminar course when we turned on CNN, and we were discussing issues of terrorism, homeland defense, how we were going to deal with the international arena in lots of other areas, and then all of a sudden it's, how is this going to affect our lives, the rest of the world, what we do? No matter what we do, it's going to be an uncertain future, and there's going to be difficulty, and it's making decisions in trying situations.
As steeped in the arts of war as it is not the West Point of their fathers. Of the 4,000 cadets, more than 600 are women. Duty, honor, country prevails, but in the context of a wider world, with an emphasis on the humanities. Brigadier General Daniel Kaufman is the Dean of West Point. He's a Vietnam veteran and was a professor of social sciences.
The cadets will graduate this June. Were 9 years old when the Berlin Wall came down. They were 11 years old when the Soviet Union disappeared. So what you and I describe as the new world is not new to them. It's the only world they know.
Fighting an enemy who generally is not visible, who doesn't have national borders, must present a very difficult challenge to someone teaching a young and future officer.
Obviously, we can't prepare them for any eventuality. What we can prepare them for is the unexpected, which is obviously what's happened. And so that intellectually they'll have the ability to bring their talents to bear to work through an unknown situation, which is exactly what we've been confronted with here.
So you're not practicing what many accuse the military of doing, which is preparing for the last war?
We hope not.
While West Point builds lieutenants for the Army, they also have to consider the fact that they're also building future generals, and we can't predict what we're going to be looking at in 25 years.
But do you think it might be important for us now to understand sort of the domestic political ramifications of Saudi Arabia and Pakistan?
In this new age of coalitions, the thoroughly modern officer must have at least a brush with diplomacy. A class in European politics is taught by Professor Russ Howard, Colonel Russ Howard, a former commando in the Special Forces.
We have visitors who come who have the impression that somehow we're just turning out little clones of kids who want to go off to war. And that's not the case. These are very thoughtful cadets. And we instill in them duty, honor, and country. We also instill in them or reinforce the moral values, their love of country.
Just wondering how many of you think that the events of September 11th will affect, in some kind of profound way, your military careers? Anybody?
It's going to be a huge impact because we talk so much about military and Army transformation. We're trying to get out of the Cold War mindset, and I think this is going to give us the boost out of the Cold War mindset. Now we're not fighting, gigantic Russian columns. We're fighting something we don't know really how to fight now. We got to change our mindset.
Well, that's my next question. This is unknown territory. You're not fighting a nation that you know of. It doesn't have massed armies or even small armies. Is there a rule book for that kind of war?
Sir, I think we absolutely are prepared to fight this new kind of war. You spoke of rule books, and I think there definitely isn't a rule book, that we've grown up to trust and to live with. But I think there definitely are guidelines. Those guidelines are a strong moral, ethical foundation that, we've all grown up with and we've bolstered here, and guidelines of common sense.
Spoken like a true officer and gentleman, no question. But do you have the same, would you have the same view, given the events that we witnessed in New York and then in Washington 2 weeks ago?
Well, sir, I mean, it's very easy to go and to get really angry at these things, at these events, at these people that did these. It's real easy to go attack an entire culture, but I don't think these are really relevant. I mean, there are good guys out there, and there are certainly bad guys out there, and we need to be able to step back and attack what needs to be attacked, do what we've been trained to do. It may be in a far different form than what we've grown up thinking it would turn out to be like, but I think we still have the tools that we need to fight and win here, sir.
Kosovo and Bosnia were peacekeeping missions that were part of some abstract problem that was going on in the Balkans. Has the events of the last couple of weeks made them conscious in a very direct way of a real war?
Absolutely. I think you saw it in the classroom today. They understand. The president talked about a long campaign, and they understand, especially the cadets you saw in the classroom today. Most all of them are firsties or seniors, and they're going. They're going to be lieutenants in June and available for duty overseas within 9 months after that.
This past weekend I went home to see my family for the first time since September 11th, and I spoke with my mother about what I needed to do, and she said, well, what do you need, why can't you just be an Army lawyer or an Army doctor or something? I said, well, because I want to be down there, and she started to cry at how real we're going to be put in harm's way. And so, yeah, I'm scared, and I think that everyone here is scared, but we're going through the training that we need to do in order to be able to be prepared for this and to let that carry over instead of that fear.
Been a confusing and traumatic time for people in this country, to some extent within the military itself as well?
Yes. Obviously, we swear to uphold and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And how we go about doing that, at the same time, protecting the very essence of the society that we're sworn to defend, is going to be something, is an issue that we have not, frankly, had to confront, at least in my professional career.
There's a difficulty with anyone you talk to in the military, their own internal struggle where no one wants to go to war, but if we're going to have to go, no one wants to be left behind.
To make these young officers effective, you don't have to turn them into Rambos.
That's exactly who we don't want to turn them into, are Rambos. And for those in the special operations community, we don't care much for Rambos. Quiet professionals is our term. That's what's needed here.
If the young men and women we talk to are any example, that quiet professionalism has taken root.
And I think the proof of it was September 11th. There was 4,000 people strong, standing there united, prepared to do whatever they were going to be called upon by the country.
One of the things that I think is going to surprise people, perhaps, is the lack of bloodthirstiness among you guys.
I don't think anyone wants to go and kill people and have to deal with innocent people and combatants, but we are prepared to go. We signed on and said this is what we are going to do. And if called upon to do it, we are going to do it, and we're going to do it right and correctly and ethically and morally.
There are, I think, inevitably going to be situations where you'll have to make a judgment call. And we sit in classes and come up with all these hypothetical moral dilemmas. I've done that in numerous classes. You can gameplay it all you want, but we, I think, deep down know the difference between right and wrong. We know that when we put on the uniform, we incur an extra responsibility, and that we are the ones fighting the war. And whatever the specific situation might be, I believe that we have a deep enough moral construct to be able to distinguish what right and wrong is.
America has always been a little uneasy about an officer class. Here, the military is expected to be the great protector of a constitution that limits its own powers. And on balance, it's worked pretty well. Conscience, said Shakespeare, makes cowards of us all. It's not quite true. Conscience, it's truly believed here, makes for better soldiers.
We have people who, as seniors in college, are responsible for leading 1,000 of their peers or 4,000 of their peers. And then you take that and you bring it back and you say, now here's your platoon of 30 or 40 of America's sons and daughters. Keep them safe and accomplish the mission. We feel prepared for it.
We Americans are going through a tragic time. We all have painful emotions following these hideous events. Here are some ways to get through this time of crisis. Please ask for help if you need it, and participate in any way you can. Donate money, donate blood, or volunteer. For information, contact your local American Red Cross chapter or visit redcross.org. Together, we can save a life.
All vacations are canceled until the network integration is complete? All but his, I bet. What is it this time? Jumbles of hardware? Databases built on 10 different platforms in 20 different countries? Does he think that's news to me? Serve it up. Send it my way. Bring it on, buddy, because I'll get it done. And that happy vacationer, the one waving from the beach as your yacht passes by, that man is gonna be me.
You can accomplish anything, even seamless integration. Fujitsu, the possibilities are infinite.
I'm a plumber. Which foamer works better on slow drains? Read the label. Drano Foamer says, wait 8 hours? Liquid Plumber Foaming Pipe Snake takes just 1 hour to clear drains and to clean pipe walls, too. That's why this Liquid Plumber's way better.
Pete Sampras knows about One-A-Day's new active multivitamin with more B vitamins and ginseng to enhance energy. One-A-Day. Get active, stay active.
The magic's gone, isn't it? You need a table for two. And a bubble bath. And some champagne.
That'll work.
Marriott Come Out and Play rates make this a great weekend to rekindle the flame.
Can you make me irresistible? Yeah.
Call 1-800-MARRIOTT. Marriott Hotels, Resorts, and Suites. Your Marriott awaits.
Monday, what happens when laser surgery goes wrong?
Why didn't you get her the foot massager?
I decided to blind her instead.
The King of Queens, then pump up.
I think I might start lifting some weights.
With Yes Dear. Next, how will Raymond solve a little bedroom problem?
Are you swingers?
You just asked if I was a wife swapper.
Now there's an idea.
And Rhea Perlman guests on the season premiere of Becker.
I am not as angry as you.
Yes, you are.
I am not as angry as you are.
All new comedy, CBS Monday.
Dave welcomes Elton John, Monday on an all-new Late Show.
The wonder of it all. Take a chance, make it happen. Pop the cork, finger snapping. Spin the wheel, round and round we go. Life is good, life is sweet. Grab yourself a front row seat. Let's meet and have a ball. Let's live. Yeah, let's live for the wonder of it all. Meet me at Foxwoods.
Foxwoods.